This is The Strategy Inside Everything. I'm Adam Pierno. All right, welcome back to another episode of The Strategy Inside Everything. This one has been a long time coming. I have been connected with our guest today, Kenneth Kinney, for over a year that we've been trading ideas.
Yeah, trading ideas.
We've been waiting for the right time to connect on this show, and I think the topic finally popped up that we were like, yes, this is the one. This is a good time. But I want to introduce Kenneth to everybody listening. He's a kind of a jack of all trades. He's a speaker. He's an author. He's a black belt in several disciplines. He is also a marketing consultant, and he is today the VP of Marketing and Digital Strategy at AI Media Group. Kenneth, welcome to The Strategy Inside Everything. How are you?
Thank you. Doing great. And you said we were trading ideas. We were trading inside stock tips.
SEC, if you're listening, that is not true.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, before we get started on today's topic, you want to give people a little bit of your career background and just catch them up on who you are and what you've done?
Yeah, you bet. So, my nickname is Shark, and I do a podcast called The Shark's Perspective. But some of that came from my own, love for scuba and for swimming with sharks since I was a kid. I've been doing that most of my life. But one of the things that I tend to think I've been able to do in my own career, maybe that's a little bit different, is that I've worked as a consultant. I've worked as an agency like I do now. I've worked on the brand side a lot. I've been a solopreneur and an entrepreneur before, and worked also as a publisher. And so when you worked in all those different forms, I think it sort of gives me a decent holistic view of how to look at the customer from all sides. Not only, and a lot of us pretend that we are the customer in marketing. It sort of goes with that. But I tend to try to think of all the views of how the customer sees us or how we see the customer.
Yeah, and all that various perspective is why I wanted to connect with you, because through all those, there's a thread of understanding media, understanding the way people consume media and what people prioritize in media, and the idea of not just media, but consumer behavior and understanding that you're very uniquely able to express in a digestible way for people. So.
And we've talked about this before. I mean, it's really, same thing you talked about. I know that I probably reference as well, as people aren't sitting back and thinking about your brand, which I completely agree with. And I don't think they have time. I really try to explain to both people on the marketing side and on the advertising side. We've gotten so channel specific. Whatever the channel is, whether it's stuff you do only in marketing or even stuff you do only in advertising, but the customer, they don't care. They only see one version of you. They're not pulling back the bloomin' onion to find, what's the inner core of your brand. They don't care. And as soon as your ad runs away, if it's not sticky enough, they're moving on and they're getting pitched by 100 other brands. There's a lot of choices out there. So yeah. I think a lot of what I talk about as well is really sort of, different ways of making things memorable, sticky. I mean, all those things are sort of related, but I think it's truly with the understanding that, all of that has to work together, and we're living in a world with way too many silos.
Yeah. When you think of consumers, do you think of them as they, or do you think of them as yourself? Or I kind of always hedge, and I think of them as ourselves. That there creates a danger for putting myself too much in the place of who the consumer really is.
Yeah, I've always thought of myself as the consumer first before a marketer. And I think that's with a healthy dose of I think it comes with being a marketer with a healthy dose of cynicism. I know we've got a lot of smart people who really believe that a lot of what we're doing in different forms of marketing or advertising always works. But, I don't believe that at all. I mean, we have the power to do a lot, but maybe not as much as we sometimes give ourselves credit for. And so I think, at least for that reason, that's kind of why I try to stay focused on looking at it from a customer's perspective rather than just from a marketer's perspective.
Yep, absolutely. And it keeps you from getting too self-focused,
Yeah.
And I think I've thought about this for a long time, that the amount of ads that have like a New York City subway scene in them, compared to the amount of people that actually ride a subway. It doesn't,
Right.
doesn't correlate. It doesn't make any sense. And it makes sense for the agency that created it and maybe the client that's based in New York or the tri-state area. But for someone in Dubuque or Texas, they're like, well, that's a neat thing that I'll never experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Most of the country doesn't live in Manhattan, even though I work for a wonderful agency that's based right in the heart of Manhattan. There is a world between San Francisco and New York. I know that's hard for a lot of folks to believe, but even if you're on the East Coast, unless you're in Boston or New York, it doesn't look like the rest of the country.
Yeah, it's very different. And we have to figure out how to communicate those things or communicate something more universal. It doesn't have to be specific to any particular transit authority.
Yeah. Well, you edit this out if you don't want to keep it, if you want to keep it evergreen. But I mean, I even think about this in relation to the COVID, what's going on with the coronavirus right now. If you are in New York, and we were just talking about this on an agency call earlier, the bubble that they're in right now and what they see with the news, it just sort of makes you so, not self-centered is not the right word, but it's a different point of view than what, if you're not in New York sees right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And that will change. And we are, let's just own it. We're recording this during the social distancing and self-isolation period. That's why we're talking in part. As the curve moves across the country, and I don't think it'll move directly east to west, but as it jumps up in different areas, we'll see that media focus move from, I don't know what the next city will be, New York. We saw it move to Louisiana. Then it'll probably go whatever the next city is. And what'll happen is not only will the curve flatten, the media intensity will flatten because they will start to lose ratings. They'll start to lose viewership. They will start to feel like the story's getting stale. And ultimately they'll say, well, this is a terrible thing for me to say out loud. But from a media perspective, now from a me personally perspective, they will say, well, that city isn't as meaningful as New Orleans is to Americans, or that it's not as important of a news story if it's not San Francisco, where I can relate it to Facebook being headquartered. So I think we'll start to see them. I think when the media scrutiny dies down, it will free people to just not be so claustrophobic like I am.
And we'll just go back to criticizing politicians.
Yeah, right. We can get back to the business at hand. So every politician is the worst person of all time, even if they're just trying to serve their country and do something honorable. Some of them are, right? We can agree.
Some of them. It depends on which channel you watch.
Well, if you flip back and forth between both and you only hear good things, they're all honorable. So I think that's how I try to do it.
Yeah, true.
That's me, Mr. Silver Lining, right?
Agreed.
But the question that I emailed you that kicked us off here is, as we are cocooning, as we are sitting around, I've been very fortunate to be very busy with work at my day job and also some other side projects and my family, but we've been just watching a lot of television. I'm calling it television. A lot of it's streamed. A lot of it is, might be over the top or a pay-per-view, or some of it is actually network shows that we hadn't watched in a long time, but we're like, oh, well, we've got this time period now where there's no commuting and we're here, and let's go catch up on this season of this show because we've never watched it before. And you have expertise in television and in addressable and kind of technology behind television. So I wanted to get your pulse on trends that you might be seeing, if any, which I'm sure it's not the first thing on your mind right now, but forecast from you of how you think, will there be something that comes out of this as the behavioral change in media that people were not doing before? Like, for example, we subscribed to Disney Plus just because I knew we were going to be in the house a lot, and I thought my kids would enjoy it. And what's really funny is I can't get them to watch it. I thought I was giving them a gift. I was like, well, we're going to be in the house for 45 days here. Let's give them a library of content. Not interested. I don't know why.
Yeah. Well, I love the way you preface that as well as, you're calling it television. And that's a big misnomer. I think that a lot of people sometimes get too focused on it. And the reason I say that is because I watch, streamed video on a 65-inch laptop. Oh. It's a Samsung or a Vizio as opposed to, an Apple, a MacBook. But so often we look at video as some sort of separate entity, but it's still TV.
Yeah.
The way it's consumed, people are getting too focused on necessarily whether it comes through a satellite box or a cable. But when you're streaming, when you're streaming Netflix, it's still TV.
Right. Yeah. And people say, oh, I want in a media plan. They'll say, well, we have to capture people on mobile. Exactly. It's like, well, mobile, what are you even talking about? Like, this is bigger. This device I'm holding up is bigger than the TV I had in my room when I was, a teenager. It's got better resolution and shows higher quality stuff on demand. I had rabbit ears when I was, 14, 15 years old.
Well, I never thought that people would, and I've heard a lot of people reference this as well. I never thought that people would watch as much TV and stream video or download a video on a phone or tablet. But I travel a lot, speaking at a lot of gigs, and I'm always watching movies and stuff on, that I've downloaded from Netflix or Prime or from wherever. I do that all the time on the road and download that's considered, video for the most part. I don't download stuff from DirecTV because it's clunky and it takes a long time to download it to a box. So, some of the just basic things that have made the consumption of stream video so light years better and less clunky than what a lot of the major providers have done have also pushed people. But a lot of it got to be because people were just sick of non-contextual, unrelated ads that didn't make any sense, and you had to sit through for years and you had no other choice but to watch them. Now people have choices, so they jumped into watching decades. Yeah, well, ever since the first TV ad was shown nearly 70 something years ago. So it was 1941. It was a Bulova ad. I use it to start off a lot of my TV presentations. And I think people sometimes forget the transitions we've made, but a lot of those shows, even that go back to black and white, it's one I on occasion will watch with my toddler, and it makes me laugh that it's available on Netflix and Prime. Is 50 years ago, 60 years ago, people were watching Andy Griffith in black and white on rabbit ears. Then came cable, and it was like one of the highest rated shows on cable with Turner Broadcast Network, or I think it was either TBS or TNT that used to show it over and over and over. It was one of the highest rated daytime shows. Then now it's being streamed with pretty good traffic on both Netflix and the same thing happened as we grew with older shows, or more recent shows rather, like Friends or Seinfeld, where you see they're paying hundreds of millions of dollars to stream shows that are now considered video, which were TV
right
6-7 years ago.
And that brand, the Friends brand, so NBC is the network that aired both of those shows, but NBC gets lost in the shuffle. Yes, they profit on the back end for sure, but they produced content for television, and now they're kind of left in the dust unless there's a Peacock logo at the end of every episode. I don't know, because Netflix doesn't show you the credits, but it's the brand of the show that has transcended the brand of the carrier, and that's right there is the demonstration of how neutral we are. Like I have a Netflix subscription, but I don't care about Netflix. And seeing all that Disney has done with Hulu, I've been thinking like, well, maybe I'll cancel this or pause this Netflix account and move over to Hulu for 6 months and catch up on all the good stuff they're doing over there, because those are shows more for me. Whereas Netflix, all I'm doing is looking at those windows that they show me and saying, man, isn't it weird that the trending row and the most watched and the top 10 thing that they're doing and the recommended for me are all the same 15 shows?
Yeah,
like that
absolutely.
Doesn't make sense given the data prowess that I hear about Netflix.
But if you look at if you look at the consumption of TV today, you are absolutely right, because a lot of the production companies are always third parties. You've seen this a lot of years with shows that were on network TV. Lucifer was made by NBC and then switched to Netflix once it got pulled off there, and so
you're seeing that
they
more
dialed
and more.
up. Yeah, you're seeing that more and more. That was even on, not even before that, but just companies. There were a lot of ones like Supergirl was a CW show that was first on CBS or vice versa. Now I'm kind of forgetting which one.
Yeah, there was also Scrubs moved from NBC to ABC for its last season.
Exactly. So you've seen a lot of those where sometimes on network TV where it was produced by a different network. Again, those are third-party productions, but you're right. The content is what's pulling us in. Now, the brands would love to tell you, Adam, that they care about you, and they have really spent a lot of time on that. But we know that they only care slightly, and they'll send you an email to tell you how much they care, along with some CDC guidelines on how to wash your hands in an email form.
They care about you as long as there's a $sign attached to it.
Exactly. But so that's been a big part of what people, I think, have still had a problem understanding that differentiation in how we consume is not really that much different. You're seeing it, you're still seeing it on a large TV, for example, for the most part. And there's a lot of consumption that comes in video that does add to the noise. And there are a lot more people that are now watching, obviously, TikTok and YouTube and everything else, but there's still a huge amount of traffic that are watching those shows, whether they're on Netflix or CBS, whether it's on your PlayStation, Xbox One, or your TV or your iPad. And that's, I think, where some people get confused in how we look at consumption. Now, how we look at advertising, though, has made leaps and bounds in the last 5 or 6 or 7 years in how we really target the people and deliver those ads. And that's been a major difference over the last near decade.
And is the current pattern, so my assumption is, I haven't looked at ratings books, but my assumption is that right now news is spiking and local news is probably spiking in a way that is saving people's lives. Do you think is that going to cook the books and change targeting for the next 6 months, that, this 30, 45, 60 day cycle of people just tuned in relentlessly to their local anchors and flipping back and forth to their cable news channel of choice?
Well, I think most of the TV providers, and I stay well connected to quite a few of them, they're struggling right now. I mean, advertising has really taken a bath across the board, but especially in TV, because when you take out the dollars for major sporting events and major other events, concerts, or
those tentpoles,
those award shows that come on, the Grammy this and the Oscar that, and then you think we didn't have March Madness, we had March Sadness, and March Sadness had nothing other than Morgan and Morgan commercials, or an insurance company,
right? Pacific Life,
or pharmaceutical, those same Liberty Mutual ads that we see over and over and over with that stupid emu. But they're really having a significant number of people cutting the cord. That is one thing, at least, is consumption and ad serving that I didn't think would accelerate. There were a lot of people 2-3 years ago saying that everybody was cutting the cord and it was happening, and they were doing it, and it was a bunch of BS. I was seeing numbers still in growth, working closely with the publishers and managing a lot of those national campaigns. This year, though, it's been different, and a lot of that is, I don't know how much is predicated on coronavirus and that, but we're seeing a lot of people cut cords right now.
So you're seeing the viewers actually change habits away from cords and move more towards streaming, or moving more towards over the top, or outside of the traditional right now at the past quarter?
As of the time we're recording this, roughly 2019 had, I believe, about a 5 million cut in total cord cutters. So you saw people getting away from the traditional Dish, DirecTV, Comcast. I mean, it's the whole universe, which is still a large universe, but you are starting to see a lot more of those cords being cut. I don't know how much of the pandemic will also contribute to that. Now, consumption of TV is way up right now with what I've seen on stream. It's one of the things taxing the internet, but it's not. The ad dollars and ads behind it don't reflect that 90%, 99% increase that we're seeing across the board. Because one thing you're not seeing right now that you would be seeing a lot of, and based on projections, everybody thought this would be a much heavier ad spend for TV this year. Michael Bloomberg, perfect example. We thought that with the election coming,
Yep.
and he's a perfect example of how much money was coming. You're not seeing any political ads the first half of the year. You probably won't until we get somewhere closer. That was nonstop in January of 2020. Now we're not seeing any. And that is going to change a lot of the ad spend as well, because those are dollars that are heavily being dependent on. But to show you where some of the spend is being shifted is, there was a story, I believe it was an ad week, and I did some follow-up reading on it, but Trump's campaign bought the front page of YouTube on election day. So if you're on YouTube, they're all over it. You'll see their ads somewhere on everything on YouTube, which is very interesting to see that their campaign is, I'm sure, going to invest in TV heavily as well as traditional TV. But you're also seeing where they're diving in full steam into digital with YouTube. Yeah.
And so more and more it's becoming the fragmented versions of video that you referenced earlier, the way that we think about all the different channels of video. Brands need to be thinking about the vertical of video, vertical of video and the horizontal, all the different ways it's going to touch people, as opposed to, well, I need to be on over the top and I need to have an addressable buy and you have to keep them all connected. It's about reaching that same specific customer, that same specific audience, that same specific end user that you're trying to reach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so many digital marketers who have believed that we were going to we were going to rocket into everything being programmatic.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not where we are yet.
They've been singing that song for 10 years.
Yeah, and it's understandable because we thought everything was going to move digital, but then you're starting to see a lot of ads that even in like 2019, like Adidas said, overly paraphrasing, but they said that we've invested too much in digital. Now they're seeing that TV and other forms of marketing fit that mix. And so
many brands, Adidas is the flag bearer, but many brands came out this year to say, like, we need to actually have real face-to-face touches with people that we know we're making a brand impact and not just a singular pixel contact.
And I'm not doing an agency commercial, but the agency I work for has a patented attribution technology. And what we're able to recognize, at least on the connected side, with where ads are seen across, and it's not model data, it's real data based on our patented technology, is that we're able to see where a TV ad that's served through a connected device at least fits that journey. And it's really an eye-opener for a lot of people, and I use it sort of as a money shot slide with different actual campaign data, that maybe instead of thinking that Google served every ad to get me to go buy, and that's why I should only believe last click, it becomes a really difficult conversation for people to understand until they see it and recognize it. And so one of sort of my own money shots I use is to show that Google has the first click, that somebody went to Google and they searched for something, but then they maybe they saw an ad through a connected TV device on CNN, or then they saw something on Facebook, then they saw something through some trade desk type data, or maybe they saw a display ad or another Google ad, or maybe they saw one on Bing, and then they saw a TV ad, and then they converted on Google at the end. Right. So then Google gets credit for last click. Now, Google gave the world of digital marketing, a gift with the most amazing analytics platform they could give. It far exceeds what everybody else is doing, but it also tells their story.
It is prioritized to tell the Google story.
Absolutely.
And it tells it in an incredible way and a valuable way, but it's not the only way.
Well, and it's, I laugh. I used to joke about Bing being the redheaded stepchild, but Bing drove 10% of my growth when I was on the brand side, and I did not ignore it. I don't know of any brand who could ever say, let's ignore 10% of growth. We don't really want to focus waste the time thinking about TV. And my point about Bing, my point is you got to look at all the parts of the journey, because your consumer is somebody who has ADHD like me, and they're looking on 20 different channels before they get to you, and they're doing a lot more research
and Bing is
content.
Yeah, Bing is a great example too, because not only does it drive that 10% or up to 20% for some brands, it does it at a much cheaper CPM or
absolutely
whatever your input measurement is. It's almost always cheaper, and it has a ceiling, but I'll take that ceiling. That's a good deal for most brands. I see that one stat that I did see is that Bing traffic actually is up right now during this
Right.
period during the coronavirus period where people are using more laptops. Mobile usage is down, which was up at almost 80% of most web visits, and web traffic is kind of dropping down to every week. It seems to be going down another 3 or 4% as people get more ensconced on their couch and say, well, why don't I just use this bigger screen with a keyboard instead of swiping so I can get a little bit more immersed and bounce back and forth between a streaming video and a website?
Well, the Bain Capital Report in 2019 came out, and she put out, a really important stat that I think for a lot of us that live in an attribution sense understand, is that 88% of people are using a secondary device when watching their TV.
Yep.
That is not a remote control, that's a phone.
Yep.
So there's a lot of mobile purchases being made. And it also makes sense that a lot of times you're going to go and spend a lot more money on that last click version of mobile search, and you're going to optimize those ads, but not understanding where a TV ad can fall into place to help trigger that. The same thing goes with direct mail, could be email, but TV's getting a lot more connectable. You're able to connect more dots than you could before.
Yeah.
We've seen that with what connected TV's done. I drove a pretty good chunk of the world's addressable TV campaigns for quite a few years, and the smartest brands were really looking at that, where they were taking their first party data. They could have it bumped up against a TV subscriber file in a very clean environment. I mean, it was like Fort Knox in the groups I work with in big data. That data was then used to, once it was hashed and sent back over to the TV subscribers, they could then take that file and trigger an ad campaign that was addressable. Then if they would provide the sales data back, you could get an anonymized data report that shows clean, pure attribution of whether a TV ad triggered a sale and how many touches did it take, just like you could with TV. Now, one of the biggest problems, though, and you're starting to see more movement in this, and I've had several conversations with people about this that are still making me feel a little bit better about how we're going to future be targeting, is that one of the problems with all providers, Bing is competing for dollars against against Google. Facebook is competing against Google. Amazon's competing against Facebook. They're all competing each other's in these, walled gardens.
Yep.
And in TV, we don't have an analytics dashboard that runs in real time that sees regardless across the channel, because they're competing for ad dollars as well.
Yep.
So whether or not the ad is run on, through a DirecTV or a Comcast ad, or it's run through something that's streamed on, through Hulu, doesn't matter to your customer at all. But what a marketer's got to understand is where they saw that ad, what did it help also trigger? And, just don't think of it only as one channel. And that's so much of what people are doing is relying on model data and forgetting that as part of, or maybe not giving enough emphasis to it. Nobody's forgetting it. No smart marketers are, but they're not able to connect the dots.
Yes. And they're not able to weight that model to see the whole picture. Yeah.
And in TV, I mean, you're looking at a major amount of spend. I mean, half the campaigns I would work on were somewhere between, 250,000 and 2.5 million. I mean, in TV, the buy is much bigger, the impact is stronger, but you're measuring that over a 30 and 60 day window. You're not A/B testing unless you have a significant amount of impressions for a major national buy. You're not able to pivot that the same way you can a banner ad, but a banner ad costs you nothing, and you only expect a 2% conversion anyway,
right,
most of the time. So
and you can achieve
the stakes are different.
Yeah, you can achieve the necessary impressions for that test in the first couple of weeks of that campaign or the first couple of days of the campaign, and turn it around and optimize and have a second A/B going inside 10 days.
But what I've really found to be, sort of a sweet spot that I love to explain to people is that, I speak at both marketing conferences and I speak at advertising conferences, and it's so different, the dynamic of the two and how they converge together.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily one group speaking Greek and the other speaking, Chinese, and they don't understand each other. But it's a little bit like Spanish and Portuguese.
Yeah.
And I speak both, and Portuguese is drunk Spanish, and not understanding exactly what somebody's saying and how the customer is going to interpret that and where it works into the mix. We're just in a very siloed environment that still creates a lot of problems to be able to optimize campaigns extremely well without at least understanding how the consumer is truly digesting both your paid media, your organic stuff, your blog stuff, all the pieces that come in between. And TV's really feeling one of the strongest impacts of that right now.
Yeah. Kenneth, this was fantastic. Thank you so much for making time during all this craziness that's going on. I really appreciate you sitting down and talking through this with me. It's been helpful, illuminating for some projects I'm working on. So sorry, I should send you a consulting check.
You're welcome. Well, I would say the only interview that would probably have been better was you on episode 140 of my show, talking about specific.
Is that the show? Is that the number I was on?
That's the number. I just checked it before. What
number are you on? What's the newest episode? I know you had 200 was a big one.
216, I think I just posted this week. But I've dialed back a little bit. I'm not doing 3 a week during the pandemic. Even I have to dial back my own content. I did one this week on advertising, but last week it was about experience and how that's going to change.
Yeah.
How customer experience is going to change. One of the things we talk about, I know we're always trying to put out thoughtful conversations because we'll get through this, but you also have to think of contextually, does anybody want to hear about advertising or something else during the wrong time? It's just something we're always going to do. This is the one time I've thought about non-evergreen.
Yep. Me too.
In the last couple of years.
I'm owning what we're talking about now and some of the reasons why for most of these episodes. And I figure people have a choice. If they don't want to listen, I understand. And if they want to listen, I want to provide something that's useful as a distraction or as a tool.
Well, the only difference between this episode now and 2 years from now is I will be better prepared for toilet paper, Clorox wipes, hand sanitizer, and stuff like that. That's really important in life. But
where can people find you online, Kenneth?
Best place is LinkedIn, Kenneth Kinney, or find me on my website, asharksperspective.com. That's the easiest place because it's got all the links to me, the show, how to get in touch with me, and more.
Yeah, and your podcast is amazing. I think the guests you have, I hate to say hashtag honored to be on it, but when I look at the roster, when I see the posts and the new episodes come into my feed, I'm like, how the hell did I get on a show with those guys are on that show? It's pretty amazing. You have the guests you have are amazing.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Well, you were an amazing guest as well. So don't knock yourself.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate the honor of being on your show.
All right. Thanks, man. Talk to you soon.
All right, buddy.
Wait, don't stop listening. The show's not over. If you liked what you just heard, or you've liked any of the episodes of The Strategy Inside Everything, do me a favor. I really appreciate it. Leave a review wherever you listen to the show, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, wherever. Please leave us a rating and a review. Please, if you can, share this episode or another episode with a friend. Let them know what you liked about it. That helps us quite a bit. If you have ideas for guests, for topics, follow up on episodes you've heard, you can tweet at us at @apierno, that's me, or at strategy_inside, that's the show. Either way, I promise I will respond to you and get back to you right away. And listen, running this show is a labor of love. I really do it just because I enjoy the conversations, but it does cost money. So web hosting costs money. Microphones cost money. My kids' haircuts cost money. If you wouldn't mind, look at our Patreon. It's Patreon, Adam Pierno there, and you could help us out quite a bit. For more information about all the guests we've had, anything you want to know about the podcast, my 2 books, Underthink It and Specific, or ways to engage with me as a strategy consultant or as a speaker at your next event, please go to addressable.com and you'll find all the information you want. And if you can't, just send me a note. Thanks a lot.